the Nuggets, they're feeling the heat, pun intended, right? So after game two, and you know me well enough, I'm a sucker for, of course, we're going to get into some more of the X's and O's of this series, but the human component always intrigued me quite a bit. And I thought after game two, and without any hyperbole attached, that there was a pretty significant difference in the demeanor and the two sides in terms of handling loss. After game one, Miami could not have been more mellow, light,
Yep.
even. You know what I mean? I wrote about
Yep.
Kevin Love and I talked to him after game one, the way he kind of rolled. He kind of embodies how they all were after game one. They were not sweating this thing at all. So go to game two. Now I get it. They're the eighth seed. Pressure's not the same as it is for Denver. You can make that argument. I would also counter by saying, especially, Jimmy Butler in particular, as great as he is, as fantastic as he's been in these playoffs, we all know Jimmy gets up in the morning with one goal in mind. And if they lose in this finals and he still doesn't have a championship, then he's going to feel like it was a failure of a season. And so this is a championship group that, has its own expectations are as great as Denver's, if that makes sense. But they were chill after game one. Denver after game two, I'm looking left, looking right, and man, there were signs all over the place of them cracking a bit. And we'll see if that carries over into game three. And again, this is kind of what I wrote today. And to share a few of those things, for one, not to make it about the media, but you had quite a few guys that did not talk post game media. And it just felt like it was a group that just, they were in their fields a little bit, didn't want to talk, didn't want to share, didn't want to have to stand in front of those mics. Michael Porter Jr., I believe, was the only one who did so without being excused by the league. There were other reasons for Aaron Gordon, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, but whatever the reasons, and I'm not sitting here trying to, kind of put them out there like that, but like it shows something to me when guys, handle post game like that. Michael Malone was very tough on his team, and we'll see if that sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But to have your coach after game three publicly, saying things like it's the finals, I was worried about energy, it's a concern, and really, raising red flags for all the world to see. I'm very curious to see their demeanor going into game three in that hostile Miami environment. And during the playoffs, that place does get pretty lit. And Miami's composure, Miami's poise, and the idea that they felt honestly more like the championship group in terms of the way they carried themselves, I think makes this series even more interesting.
Yeah, and the tie the two ends. I don't think it was just I don't want to say lack of composure post game, but I think just the lack of experience maybe you saw was post game, and I think during the game you saw kind of Denver lose grip of the rope, and just the way they were defending Miami, where you saw so many times just a Miami guy wide open from the 3-point line, just a missed rotation, or two guys doubling Duncan Robinson coming off of action and leaving Gabe Vincent wide open. I think you saw consistently, it just seemed like Denver was just kind of lost out there. They were unsure. There was a lack of communication. And you saw kind of the mistakes you see from a team maybe in round one of the playoffs, but you rarely see teams just make consistent mistakes and just gaffes the way that the Denver did in game two. And I wrote this, after the game, that as well as the 3-point numbers look for Miami after the game, 17 for 35. If you go through all of those 3-pointers, and I did after the game, you kind of sit back and say, man, they could have made 20, 22 3-pointers easily in this game,
Yeah.
just from the looks they were getting and just
Wow.
how often Miami was just getting wide open shots. And I think that's where you saw the frustration come from Michael Malone after the game, because it wasn't just Miami who was running this complex system where the guys were getting lost and there was uncertainty. It was just one drive, one pass, guys wide open. And I think over these past couple of days, I'm sure Michael Malone is getting on his team about just staying locked in and just understanding, how to communicate, how to be in the right place at the right time. And I think you saw specifically with Michael Porter Jr. and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, I think you saw those two guys just out of just not in the right spaces. And a lot of times you saw, I think, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope fouled 2 3-point shooters during the course of that game. I think you kind of saw them losing their poise a little bit as that game went along. I think they were all kind of beating their chests and feeling themselves a little bit as they went up 15 in the second quarter. And as we said before, we know with Miami, they're never going to feel scared. They're never going to feel like, oh man, we don't have it tonight. That they're just going to
Right.
keep plugging along. And as they started cutting into that lead, you saw Denver just kind of just get shook a little bit during the course of that game. And I think that's something that Michael Malone is hoping he can use to build on. But one thing with this Miami team, and I think you saw it in the Milwaukee Bucks series, once they smell blood, once they
Right.
kind of see that the Russian bleeds, that they say, "Uh-oh, we got him." And I think you saw it against Giannis, where they said, "Uh-oh, we got these guys." With Jimmy Butler was talking smack to Drew Holiday, that was him saying, "Yeah, we got you. We're not just going to beat you tonight. We're going to beat you mentally. We're going to snatch your heart out." And I think that's what Michael Malone really feared. I think you kind of saw that in his post game. He said he was kind of saying it without saying it, that, hey, we can't allow these guys to kind of take our hearts to beat us mentally. We got to
Right.
be prepared to play these guys, because we can't just live off of talent, because that Miami team is great for so many more reasons than just talent.